Every major event of the format is basically over. We're a little bit through Euros right now, and I probably should have waited until after Euros happened to release this list, but after talking to my friends, keeping in touch with all the people, doing well, I kind of got an idea of what's going on, and I feel like it's a bit overdue, and between this format and last format, I feel like not much has changed in terms of the deck's potential and power. So what I'm going to do in this video is, I'm going to talk to you about what I think has been the best cards of this format. Probably seeing a ban list soon. We're probably coming to the end of an era for Nekroz and maybe even Shaddoll and Taylor because they've been untouched for like a year now. Perhaps Konami will think it's time. Things are moving fast, and I want to take a look at the past format, maybe even the one before that, just in retrospect. Ask ourselves what has been the absolute best standalone cards. As a small disclaimer, please understand that this is my opinion only, and if you disagree, that's fine, and I'm not trying to force my opinion on anyone. Yeah, this is just what I think has been the best card so far. Number 10, FarfaYGO of the Burning Abyss. Burning Abyss went from almost being like tier 0.5 in January to like completely falling off the radar in a single set. When Nekroz were released, their first major event was YCS Tacoma, I believe. Now, the previous YCS, Burning Abyss were something like over like half the top cut, like a third to a half of the entire top cut. And then at Tacoma, when Nekroz released, there was not a single BA top in the top 32. Like, that is insane. Think about that. Like, they didn't lose anything. They didn't get touched on a ban list. Just one single set, the deck fell off the radar. Over time, however, people have started to realize the true power of Burning Abyss, and even today, like now, which with one tour guide, they still managed to take a couple of spots here and there, and as we saw last weekend, even the entire North American WCQ. But enough about Burning Abyss. I feel like FarfaYGO isn't that great against Nekroz, but I think it has its uses, which is why it isn't really, way higher up the list. But if you're not playing Nekroz, like, every deck is like terrified of this card because it can be just a complete blowout. It's like searchable, recyclable. You can like just keep looping it. I mean, it's absolutely amazing card. Like, play this with good and evil. It's so good. And if you're a Burning Abyss player, you're probably worried about the ban list. Yeah, I'd sell your Dantes now, honestly. Number 9, Effect Veiler. I think at the beginning of the Nekroz inception, this card saw a little more play. And I'm pretty sure that we can all be in agreement that hand traps in general are absolutely phenomenal this format. Veiler is just great. It stops basically every problem card in Nekroz. And for decks like Shaddoll, this is like a staple 3 of, because it's light as well. And nobody wants to have their fusions trished. I think if this was more clutch in the Nekroz mirror, I'd have put this higher. But I don't think it's been that relevant in the Nekroz mirror. It's pretty cool because you can stop things like Djinn, like if you're going second, and yeah, just like you can stop Manjus and Senjus if they're low on resources. It's got its applications, but I don't think it's an absolute blowout in the mirror match like other cards are. Number 8, Denko Sekka. What can we say about Denko? Card's a freaking cold wave on legs. I don't know how it's legal. Honestly, card's absolutely nuts. 1700 heavy storm, essentially. Like, if you don't have like warning or chaos chapel or something, game usually ends there. Like, legit, Denko is so busted in Nekroz as well because you can have Valk as well. Like, just actually think about it. You have a cold wave that you can like normal summon, and then you can protect it. So even if they draw a bigger monster and finally manage to unlock their 3 or 4 set cards, and they attack, you just Valk, and then next turn you Trish them or whatever. It's the synergy it has in Nekroz is absolutely amazing. And the only reason this card isn't like top 5 or even number 1, which I really did consider to put this at, is because just of the fact that we're in a format where we're not really like trap heavy, we're more floodgate heavy, so we aren't like dealing with reactive traps particularly as a problem. We're dealing with floodgates. And when you're playing against clean, they flip lose a turn, skill drain in the standby phase or whatever. Denko doesn't deal with that in any shape or form, so that's why Denko's only at number 8. Number 7, Maxx. Again, hand traps have been phenomenal this format, but I think Maxx is just a little bit better than Veiler. Obviously, they do completely different things, but I think like as a category of hand traps, Maxx is a little bit better. Nekroz can easily stop when they get Maxx. Like, which is why this card isn't further up the list, because if you maxi against like Nekroz, then okay, whatever, they just stop. You know, it's not a big deal for them. In the Nekroz mirror match, however, maxi is a really big deal because you gotta make sure at the end of your turn that you've cleared your board. Now, your special summons are like pretty critical when you're clearing your board. Like you could like Kaleido for Unicorn, and then you know you get max seed, so your opponent gets a 1-for-1. But then you also got to find out other ways to like, you know, get Valk out as well. So they're gonna go plus off that maxi, and you know, in the Nekroz mirror, it's all about who has more cards. And yeah, I just feel like it's such an amount of like pressure to deal with in the mirror match that this is, you know, why I've put this as number 7. And the only reason I haven't put it higher up is because maxi isn't that great outside of the mirror match. There is Burning Abyss, of course, but yeah, I just feel like other cards have managed to like be a little bit higher up. Number 6, Djinn Releaser of Rituals. I think it goes without saying that everyone has at some point in this format or even the previous one, every single like person who has played this game relatively competitively, all of you have at one point sat there behind the Djinn contemplating whether or not you're going to hang yourself. It's a searchable, protectable Vanity's Emptiness. This card is unbelievably degenerate, and even the best and most skilled players can lose to this one single card. And I feel like it's been pretty format defining. Just so many like mirror matches have been lost to this single card, and you know, I feel for you guys. But I feel like other cards have been a little bit more powerful than Djinn in this format. But you know, you might disagree. I think I seriously considered this for like number 2 or 3. But we see so many outs for this card, you know, and generally, if you watch like streams and stuff online, Djinns get outed within like a turn, or they don't get outed at all. There's like no in between. Like people either out the Djinn instantly, or they don't out it and lose. Like that's just how it is. So number 5, speaking of Djinn, we have Book of Eclipse. Book of Eclipse was pretty staple for a while, but people have found their ways of outing Djinn without running this card, because inherently I feel like Eclipse is a pretty bad card. Like you don't want to Eclipse a big field of monsters. So like if you're playing as Nekroz and you finally draw the Eclipse and they've managed to like establish a board, you're probably only going to be able to deal with like 1 or 2 of their monsters that turn, and then they're still going to get a draw at the end phase. The card is pretty bad, but for what its purpose is and what it does, it gets around all the protection of Djinn. Like they can search out Gungnir, Trish, Valk, they can search anything they want, and Eclipse just gets around it all, and they're probably going to get Trish as well. That usually is the follow-up play after you Eclipse someone's Djinn. But you know, it's not like the best card to have if your opponent isn't Djinning. It's actually almost really awful. Like if your opponent doesn't play Djinn or hasn't played the Djinn like so far, it's just kind of sitting in your hand. Especially in multiples, you're just kind of looking at them thinking, wow, this is more dead than MST game 1 against Nekroz. But it also happens to be pretty okay outside the Nekroz mirror match, which is why I've put this ahead of Djinn, because I feel like it's got applications against other decks. You know, if you're playing against like BA or something, like you can like Eclipse on the reveal of the hand, and they go like neg for it. It's not like the best, but like you do, there are applications, and I think I'm sure we can all agree the best application outside the mirror match is when you're like stuck under skill drain, lose a turn, something like that. So you make like Exciton and then you chain Eclipse. And let's be honest, Exciton Knight is like a bit of a win condition against Clifford for Nekroz, I'd say. And I feel like this card could have been higher up, but you know, like I said, it is inherently a really bad card. It just has one single purpose, and that's it. So I feel like this maybe is probably like a joint 6th with Djinn. That's how I think about this card. Number 4, Mystical Space Typhoon. What can we say about this format? This card has been relevant since like the beginning of Yu-Gi-Oh! This card was limited at one point. Like this card will always be relevant. I can never ever see MST being a bad card. Well, I mean, it probably could be a bad card, but generally, like it'll dip in and out of popularity. But MST will always like be there for when you need it. When you're playing against in the side deck, maybe main deck, but this card is at least going to be in the side deck, like for generations to come, literally. Like, you know, as a Necroz player, when you're playing as non-Necroz, you gotta fight through Mistake, you gotta fight through Lose a Turn, you gotta fight through Necro Valley, Mirror Force, Fiendish Chain, back row after back row after back row. I swear, this card's like a staple 3 of, like outside of, maybe like continental events like WCQs, like North American WCQ, like the continental level events. Like at a regional level, national level, I would 100% play MST, like just because there's so much dog shit decks running around just trying to like lower your ceiling, and just, yeah, like you need to play MST like against like pretty much like every event you go to. Like you just need to like side it at an absolute minimum. The card has been absolutely valuable in this format. Number 3, Mistake. What is this card even about? Seriously, why is this a card? Like, they limit skill drain, they limit emptiness, and they don't limit Mistake. It's like, okay, I mean, in my opinion, any card that says, any continuous card, sorry, like any continuous card that says you can't or your opponent cannot, like, that should just be banned. That's not fair. You should not have a card that just sits there permanently on the field, looking at your opponent, flipping them the finger. Like, that's not fair. Like, Breakthrough Skill, Fiendish Chain, Deck Lockdown, these are like cards that are sort of like, they mirror kind of what the other, like, so like Breakthrough represents Fiendish Chain, Deck Lockdown represents Mistake. Like, I feel like these cards are okay and healthy for the game because, they eventually leave the field like on their own accord. And yeah, it's just like, at least you can get around it eventually. Mistake, however, I just don't understand Konami's logic, because they limit other floodgates, but not this one. Yet this one is more relevant than the other ones, potentially. Or maybe not Vanities. Vanities is absolutely nuts. But anyway, Mistake has just been so relevant in this format. And if you're playing, especially Shaddolls, even Burning Abyss, like, you need to run this card just to compete against Necroz. Like, why wouldn't you play a card that just says no to your opponent? I mean, at Euros, I've been hearing that people have been playing this card in the Necroz mirror match. Can you imagine the Necroz mirror match people are playing Mistake? Like, wow, that is just nuts. I mean, and that's why I've put this card a little bit higher up my list, because of the fact people are playing this in the Necroz mirror match. Like, what even's going on? Number 2, Shared Ride. I think it's safe to assume that if you want to be really, really competitive and to generally have a chance at being number 1 consistently, you got to play Necroz. And this card is hands down the best card of the mirror match. And I know you're probably really bored of me at this point talking about the mirror match, putting so much emphasis on the Necroz mirror match. You gotta understand, we're in a format where it's pretty much tier 0.5. Like, half the decks in the entire game are going to be represented by Necroz. Like, the Euros turnout was like a third. There's just one deck. Just one deck represents a third of the entire player base of 6 potentially viable decks. Like, we have really good decks right now. Like, we have Shaddolls, Burning Abyss, Tellarknight. These are all pretty good decks. Like, but the power creep is just so powerful that it just dwarfs, everything else, and we're stuck with this one deck that just is the best, and that's why I feel like the mirror match is so important. So this is why I'm putting this as number 2, because I feel like Shared Ride again is so good, because if you time it in the mirror, like on a Manju, they're going to be like in so much trouble, because they're going to have to give you more cards like to clear their field than like a Maxx would, because as we know in the mirror match, you gotta clear your field if you don't want to get trished. And it's not even that bad to main if you're like playing Necroz, like, because you want to have the best advantage you can game 1 playing the mirror match, because that is what you like play most of. So you gotta, people have been maining this and stuff, and it's not the worst card outside the mirror match. Like, if you're playing against relevant meta decks like Tellarknight, Klee, Burning Abyss, like, you're gonna get like a 1-for-1 at least out of it. It's not like a completely blank card. It's just not the worst card to draw outside the mirror match. Apart from like Shaddol, it's probably really awful against Shaddol. But in the mirror, this card can just straight up win games. Like, if you time this at the right time, like, your opponent they flat out can't do anything. If they can't OTK you through Valk, and they're stuck under Ride, and they've committed like a normal summon to the board, like, and like maybe you're already ahead in like cards by 1 or 2, you've probably won just right there and then. You've won to like a Shared Ride, and this is why this is my number 2. Now on to the final card of this format. I just like to give some shoutouts to some cards that never made the list. Thunder King, Rota, Raigeki, Lancia. These cards are all really, really awesome, but I couldn't bring them into this list just because I felt like everything else that I mentioned so far has been most relevant. If you've come this far, I'd like to thank you for listening, and here we have our drum roll. Now, the best card of this entire format, and even the past format, in my opinion, number one is Nekroz of Trishula. This card is single-handedly the defining card of the entire game. Just think about that. Since Nekroz were released, everyone, absolutely everyone in this game, from the rogue casual player at your locals to the competitive, super competitive, like world champion qualifying level player, he has been playing around Trishula. The entire Nekroz mirror match is completely based on avoiding being trished. Think about that. Just really think about that for one moment. Never in the history of this game has there been a mirror match where both players are actively seeking to avoid the other player's single card that they have access to as well. You have to push for damage, you gotta end with Vault, you gotta clear your field because of this one single monster. This one monster completely defines how you play this game. Think about that. Anyone outside the mirror match can't afford to be trished. People these days gotta set their hands, you know, even if you have big good cards that you don't want really set on the field and have them at risk of being MST'd or whatever, like Raigeki, Dark Hole, like, you have to set everything. You gotta set your monsters if you, like, you know, don't want to normal summon that turn or whatever. Yeah, you have to avoid Trish. You gotta play Veiler. You gotta side Lancias. Everyone has to do something to avoid this card. And Trish is an absolute blowout against some decks, like Shaddoll, which is, you know, why triple Veiler is standard. Like, you need to not be Trished. And this single one monster, you know, it's even funnier because you play one Trishula. Like, in general, most people have been playing one Trishula. You just play one Trish. That's it. And it's caused so much devastation and havoc, and just as the best card in the game. It really is, just because of how influential I think it's been. Like I've said, I want to really emphasize the point that Trishula defines how you play the game. It defines how you build your deck. It defines how you play the mirror match. Can you imagine, just like think about this for a second, saying to your opponent, do you want to side out Trish? Now imagine you and your opponent both agreed to side out all your copies of Trishula. Just think about how differently you'd play the game. Just think about how strange it would be to play without, like, the usual clear your field, blah blah blah, search mirrors at the end of the turn. Like, that's why I think this card is the best card in the game right now, because it is. I don't think it's like super powerful, because like you can, like, I've seen people get trished and still win, of course, but I don't think it is like destroying the game or anything. I think it's pretty fair card, you know. But my point here that I want to emphasize is that Trishula has influenced the game so much. Like, the way you play is different to how you play if there was no Trishula in the match you're playing. Do you know what I mean? That's why I've put so much emphasis in this, and this is why, as my countdown winds down, that I have said that Nekroz of Trishula is the most, like, defining card of the past format, and even the past two formats. So this wraps up my list, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some kind of entertainment, refreshing ideas, or whatever from what I've said. If you've enjoyed my video, please like, subscribe, like me on Facebook too, by the way, facebook.com/GlasgowYGO. And thank you again, and I'll see you next time.